Hey, welcome back to another edition of Everything Football 62. I'm your host, Jonathan Big Tex Johnson, a.k.a. Uncle Tex, a.k.a. Professor Tex. Before we get started, smash that like button, subscribe to the page, share with a friend. Got any questions, comments, concerns, leave them down below. We go back and forth with a little banter, tasteful banter and whatnot. Keep it classy. And about football, remember, it's just a game. I've kind of done shows like this in the past. Not really. It'd be a little bit more in depth with this one here, um, because we have oftentimes because the goat conversation that comes up so often when we start talking about quarterbacks and whatnot. That main position, we don't really talk about it any place else but that particular position. Running back will come up occasionally. Wide receiver come up occasionally, but for the most part, quarterback position is the major position where it comes up, where that conversation comes up at. And what I'm going to tell everybody, because the NFL, the convenience of a lot of things. The first Super Bowl was played sometime in January 1967, following the '66 season, and that was the first Super Bowl played, and playing NFL versus AFL and all that kind of stuff like that. And they would later on merge in 1970, I believe. And so what happens in a lot of cases when we're talking about this kind of stuff, oftentimes from a historical standpoint of view, everybody, so now after this is the 58th Super Bowl, this is going to the 58th year of the Super Bowl being played. Oftentimes what ends up happening is the fact that everything, so we're in the 58th year of playing the Super Bowl. 53, 54 years of the merger. So it's like, so with that, with that, we tend to forget championships. That what they were called not that long ago from a historical standpoint of view, NFL championship. That was the considered world championship game. That's what was considered. That's what it was. So to sometimes now, because I've heard people, and if guys I've went back and forth with, even played hockey or whatever, stuff like that. Well, I don't count those guys that played back in the NHL back in the 30s and 40s, 20s, 30s and 40s, 30s and 40s, and all this other, and all this other kind of shit. I'm only dealing with that now. It's like that's not a fair assessment. It has to count. If their records and their stats and all that is in the record books and in the Hall of Fame and whatnot, and the Hall of Fame acknowledges that, guess what? Then you have to acknowledge what they did. You have to. So I'm gonna be surgical in what I'm doing. Some of these players, you might be, well, why are you just using those guys? But you'll get the meaning. But a lot of the guys that I'm going to be using have 3 or more championships, 3 or more, right? And whatnot. A lot of quarterbacks is not on this particular list that I have that I'm going to be showing you. And even some of my favorite quarterbacks are not on this because they didn't win 3 or more championships. That doesn't make them any less quarterback. Because remember, you got to still play the game. Like you can see here, best quarterback in the NFL, they got Brady up there. They got Brady up there. Okay, fine. 7 championships and stuff like that or whatever. Guy was a hell of a quarterback. Wasn't the most gifted, didn't have the most honesty, but he didn't beat himself. That's what I always admired about Brady. He didn't beat himself. If it wasn't there, throw it in the dirt. But everybody do what they're supposed to do. I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do what I'm supposed to do. My job is to put the ball in your hand the best way I possibly can, and that's what he did. But it's far other guys that I think played the position better than he played it, and had the different things. I say Brady racked up a lot of stats because Brady played 22 years or something. So 22, 23 years. So you'll have that. But we're going to talk about guys with 3 or more championships and where do they rank and why don't you count certain things? And one of the other things I also get tired of, remember it was this question that was asked, they had talking to Tom Brady about something. Somebody was telling a story about Brady. And he said the thing about, I don't give a shit about Pro Bowls, this, that, this. I'm chasing Jordan. Jordan doesn't play fucking football. I never understood that. I never understood why he would say something like that. This is football. Just like the whole thing, I can't stand to sit up there and see Jordan's Jumpman logo on a fucking football jersey. These guys wear fucking cleats. Jordan don't wear no fucking cleats. So I'm like, I don't understand that crossover thing where Jordan has nothing to do with football. Nothing to do with football. And it's like, he said, I'm chasing Jordan. No, he could, I'm chasing Jordan. Well, why aren't you chasing Bill Russell? Or a lot of plethora of other Boston Celtic guys that had 7 and 8 rings, the 8 and 9 rings. That's in the Hall of Fame. But like I said, people, it's conveniently how everybody kind of does this bullshit, and it's kind of nerve-wracking from a historical standpoint of view. At least to me, it is. Now, having said that, that's not taken away from anybody or anything as far as that goes there. But I'm like, it's convenient. We're going to start with the Super Bowl, and so now for the past 58 years of playing it, NFL won both times. The first 2. Third one, that's when Joe Namath came in with the guarantee. Blah, 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 blah. So, and whatnot. So then we don't talk about this. So let's start it up right now. Let's go ahead and get it going right now. We're going to first start off with when the Chicago Bears used to rule the rules back in the 40s with Sid Luckman. Right? Sid Luckman, who was a quarterback. And you're talking about somebody who won 4 NFL championships. Remember the all-40 decade team and whatnot. And all that. His record, I think they got 128 and 61, and he won 4 NFL championships. Okay, now, dude, you winning that many? I mean, you're up there. You're definitely up there. And Sid Luckman was, I ain't gonna say the Brady of his time because he was one of the first that's really doing this. So you put him up there and be like, okay, then that was the guy that you had to look at and say he's the man. Now, he played from 39 to 1950. So by the time he retired, then you got the great Otto Graham, Automatic Otto, come on the scene. Otto Graham, they came on the scene, right? Otto played 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. I want to say he played 10 years, right at 10 years or whatnot. So Otto came in the league 46, I think. Let me see here. 40. Oh, why would they sit up there and have this mess on here? So ridiculous. Where did I find his stats? I had this stuff all set up and whatnot. Where is his? That's just ridiculous. Full record. Let me see here. Ridiculous. Anyway, so 57 and 13 and 1. They 1, 2, 3. They negated the American Football Conference. His quarterback record and the games that he played. I don't know why, but they did. Well, that's not that. Well, they didn't do that with the AFL. But anyway, they kept his yards and everything there. So you use it in one sense. And then, so 57, so technically, you can find out real fast. It's 57, 13, and 1. So they didn't count. They're not, for whatever reason, not counting all the games that was played in the AAF, the All-American Football Conference, which is fine. But you can't negate it because you use his yards and whatnot. You use his yards. So how do you go from that? I'm going to use the stats, but I'm not going to use all the other wins that he compiled and not count the championships, even though they'll say it, the 4 AAFC championships and the 3. So that's 7. So if you look at what Otto Graham did, this guy played, let me see, 46, played 10 years, I believe. For 10 straight years, he was in the championship game. And he won 7 championships. He won 4 in the AAFC, and he won 3 in the NFL. That was 7. Shouldn't Jordan say he should be chasing Graham? People say, no, because he was the AAFC. Okay, but everything else counts, but that don't count. Okay? Again, these are people that's dealing with this stuff, Super Bowl era, and that, like, nothing else counts as far as that goes there. Nothing else counts. Okay? Nothing else counts. All right? With Graham. Okay? Now, and by this time, Otto Graham pretty much is known. So, okay, he's one of the baddest dudes ever do it and all this kind of stuff. But you go back to this guy here, who was basically known for revolutionizing the revolutionizing the position. The great Johnny Unitas had a picture, but I don't know, the picture's tripping or whatever and stuff like that now. But with Johnny Unitas and everything, and Unitas, 5-time All-Pro, Super Bowl champ, and he has 3 NFL championships. One you're going to count because it was probably like to do his conference championship, but nonetheless, he had that. The man with the golden arm. And so it's like what he did in his lore of football, or what he did in that 58 championship game versus the Giants. The way the position is played today is because of what he basically did in that game in 1958. What he did in that particular game. And you go back here, if we just go here and take a look at the things that he was doing, that he was accomplishing in the latter part of the 50s on through the 60s. By the time it hit 1969, 1970, 1969 or whatever and stuff like that, by the time it started hitting there, or 70, or by the time the NFL was 50 years old, right? It was already pretty much established by 1969, 1970. By the time Unitas was 35, 36 years old, or whatever, he pretty much had everything wrapped up by the time he was 34 in 1967. He was already established as the greatest quarterback for the most part, of playing the position at that time. He was known by that for the latter part of the 60s by the time, in all that. He was already, for playing the position, and has won at this time a couple of championships at this time. 2 to be exact, and then you got the third, which was the conference championship game that they would win in 70, and then go play in the Super Bowl against Dallas in Super Bowl 5. But 2 championships NFL, if you don't want to check, or if you want to use them, that's 3, and it would be 3 and 4. But that's not the final game, okay? But you have to. It has to be. You have to look at it that way there. And you look at stats and whatnot, his record, 118, 60, and 63 with 4 ties. Now, and Unitas was one of the first to come along with the 2-minute drill, but it wasn't called a 2-minute drill. Now, let's go to this guy, the great Bart Starr for the Green Bay Packers. Here we go again with him and what he did. Now, Bart Starr, 2-time Super Bowl champ, 5-time NFL champ. Now, subtract 2 because 2 was conference games. That's 7, 6, 5. That's still 5 championships, considered 5 quote-unquote world championships. Because in 66, 67, they won the NFL conference championship game, I think 2 times against Dallas. And that was to go on to go play the championship game. So at that time, so by the time it hit 66, by the time it hit 1966, there were no more. That wasn't the championship game just throughout the NFL. Right? They're playing that last game, which would be their last game, which were 2 NFL championships that they got against Dallas, but they wasn't world championships. So subtract those 2. So you're still sitting at, with the first 2 Super Bowls and 3 NFL championships, that's 5. That's why before I even talked about this a while back when Brady was on his quest for trying to get all this other stuff as well, I'm like, he hasn't played ball, but nobody wants to pay attention to that. There's no attention paid to that. And whatnot. So, okay then, but take a look at your 5 NFL. So really it's 5 world championships he's had. Exclusion of the 2 NFL conference championship games. Because they're no longer world championships. The other ones are considered world championships. Okay? The other 2 was the right to get to the Super Bowl to play in the world championship. And United's far better quarterback. Bart Starr had his 1-time All-Pro season back in 1966 at age 32. After being in the league for 10, 11 years at that time. So it goes 11-2, and yeah, not the greatest stats, but he was steady, especially for that time and era and whatnot. But Unitas was still considered the man at that time. Now people might ask about Sammy Ball, Bobby Lance. No, I'm talking about guys that won 3 or more championships. This is what we're talking about. Okay. Then we roll over into the 70s. We roll over to the 70s. The man, the myth, the legend, Bradshaw. He's got some kids that only know Bradshaw as the big belly guy, funny guy, and stuff that's been on TV that does the Fox or CBS. I think he does Fox now and stuff like that or whatever and all that. And that's all they know. They don't even realize that he actually played quarterback and is one of the better quarterbacks to play. Now, Bradshaw, believe it or not, like I said, people don't realize this, but Bradshaw really didn't start getting it, and even, until about his 5th or 6th year in the league. And he only went to 3 Pro Bowls after, playing, damn near 13, 14 years. 3 Pro Bowls and one time All-Pro, and that's the year that they went to the Super Bowl. It's the year that they went to the Super Bowl and whatnot. It's 14-2, 2,900, you led the league in touchdown passes and whatnot. So he did that. So Bradshaw, bullet, cannon for an arm. He has 4 Super Bowl championships. So even during the 70s, even though Johnny Unitas basically has 3 championships, 2 NFL championships and then 1 Super Bowl, right? So, but it was no question throughout the 70s that Unitas wasn't that Unitas was the guy. That Unitas was the guy. And I said, I can go back here to, what's it here? No, I don't have it here. But I'll go back to, like I said, going back to Bradshaw and what he accomplished and whatnot for Super Bowl. That's the thing to get. That didn't make Bradshaw the greatest of all time because he won 4 Super Bowls. Bradshaw was fun. It was a plethora of quarterbacks that was better than Bradshaw. You know what I'm saying? Plethora, talent-wise and stuff like that than Bradshaw. But he won 4. Just because you won 4 doesn't mean that now your play, if you want to be considered that, then you bring all that stuff with it. But that wasn't really the case for Bradshaw. He had a couple of really good years where he was the best in the business. But, they won 4 Super Bowls. They won 4 Super Bowls in 6 years. Then we go to Joe Cool, Joe Montana, right? What Joe Montana did. He comes and basically ties Bradshaw. I think he was a better quarterback, but he didn't have Bradshaw's arm. But he was, he didn't have Bradshaw's arm, but he was a winner. And you talk about a 3-time All-Pro, 8-time Pro Bowler, and 2-time MVP. 80s team and all that stuff there, and Offensive Player of the Year. Record 117-47, right? Finished up his last 2 years with the Kansas City Chiefs and helped them out. And I think they may have gotten to AFC Championship game and whatnot. So, and it was like, okay, well, this guy here, and even from there, it wasn't still clean cut. They said, well, he won 4. But still didn't pass Bradshaw. So the argument still, even going into the 80s, somewhat into the 90s, it's still the argument like Johnny Unitas was still considered the best that ever played the position. Okay? Best that ever played the position. Now we go to Tom Brady, as I was speaking about Tom Brady. We all know what Brady's done. He's constantly talked about it and everything. He's done everything under the sun that you can name as far as quarterbacking and stuff like that. Did everything, you name it. Went from a quote unquote game manager that however people try to take out of context what Cam was talking about and stuff like that. So that's, Brady did it all. He got prolific as far as the passing concern. He got into that because first he wasn't really like that. Then he got prolific in the passing, stepped the game. But then he stayed in the era by the time it hit 2009, 2010, where you can't have violent hits on receivers no more. So you got to let them literally catch the ball before you can goddamn. Or it used to be taught, you got to let them possess the ball first. Now you can have them. Used to be, as soon as their fingernails touch the ball, you knock the snot out of it. Well, you can't do that no more. You got to let them win, then tackle them. So, and we all know seven rings, 7 championships, and so 7 rings, and all this other kind of stuff like that. All the Pro Bowls, you name it, blah 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 blah. All of that stuff. He did all of that. We already know. We already know what's up with Brady. Brady is that guy. He's going to be the guy that everybody called himself chasing and whatnot, and rightfully so. And rightfully so. So right now, so tomorrow's game on the Super Bowl weekend. So tomorrow's game is basically getting ready to cement, even though this young man's a Hall of Famer already, whether he wins it or not. But he's only 28, so he probably has a good another 6 or 7 years at his top performance that he can still peak at, especially if they build the team right and everything. And because I think he could get that player to come over there, and that's Pat Mahomes. We already know what Mahomes has already done. You know, we already know what he's done. 6-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro, two-time Super Bowl champ, 2-time league MVP, Offensive Player of the Year. He's done it all already. You know, all of that. He's done it. He's done all of that, and he's getting ready to go to his fourth Super Bowl in like 6 years. I mean, the guy is phenomenal. If he gets to a point where and even with a down year, like this year was a down year for him supposedly. I remember Aaron Rodgers said, somebody said, you know how many guys in the league, it was a down year for Aaron Rodgers a couple of so years ago. He said, you know how many guys that would dream to have the type of season I had that's considered a down year? So 10-6, 4,183 yards, 27 touchdowns. That's as low as he had since 2019. The game had to change. 14 picks. I think that's the most in his career. Prior to that, it was just 13. And a lot of drops, which would have turned this into probably about a 4,500-yard passing season. But that's neither here nor there. He's doing what he's doing, and he's in the Super Bowl again. Patrick Mahomes said, so now, does he have an opportunity to go catch somebody Brady? He still has time. The way he started out the gate, if he gets 3 at 28, say he gets 5 by the time he turns 30, then there's a chance. He has to go at least back-to-back or within the next couple of 3 or 4 years, get to at least possibly 5. And then there's a chance. But I definitely think they're going to overhaul the team offensively. And at this time, he might have to get his Randy Moss. He had his Randy Moss, but Tyreek Hill left. So if the receiver, number 4, comes along the way he's supposed to, a couple more other guys here and there, Pacheco's running the ball, hey, man, and that could be a nice nucleus now. I don't think Kelsey has a lot more left, but we'll see what happens. But Mahomes is already almost at the cusp. Now, he's chasing Tom, but 1 year at a time. That's all you can do. But the kid he's already done things that a lot of other quarterbacks in the league that's been great quarterbacks that's in the Hall of Fame never done. But he has won 2. It's a lot of great quarterbacks that have won 2. A lot of great quarterbacks have won 1. A lot of great quarterbacks never won any. So that happens, you know. But this is what I'm talking about. So when we start speaking about this situation here, the chasing of, at least he says, I'm chasing Brady or trying to chase rings. If I get to it, to get to whatever, we're chasing rings. But it's nothing about no mention of a Jordan. I don't even want to hear that. You know what I'm saying? So again, I made this because it was imperative to make this, because I don't think that when we're talking about these quarterbacks, when we're talking about great quarterbacks, oftentimes everybody wants to take everything from the Super Bowl era and just go from there. And that's fine, because that's the era that we're in. But you can't dismiss other guys like Brady's the only guy that won. He was going to say, they won 7 Super Bowls. Got it. That's the era time. So the same way that you count the Super Bowl, once upon a time, the NFL was the same exact way. You counted that. One of the greatest receivers that ever played in the league played the majority, 95 or 97% of his football in the AFL, and that's Lance Bambi Allworth. Do you Do you say, or it's just NFL thing? Then his shit shouldn't count. Then it wouldn't count, but it counts. So Otto Graham shit counts. It's like the 5 NFL championships that Bart Starr has counts. The 2 or 3 the 3 I believe that Johnny Unitas has count. Sid Luckman, his 4, they have to count. Because they were the quote-unquote Super Bowl over that era, that NFL championship, so they counted as world championships. Everybody would say that. Go back and listen to any of those type of old NFL film stuff. That stuff counted. So it has to count. So Brady is at that. But I used to always tell guys, argue back and forth, he said, no, he tied with Otto Graham. Case closed. He's tied with Otto Graham. Until you take Graham's, all of his AAFC stats out, then we can't. Then if it's not to be counted, then you have to dismiss the AFL. Now, some slick asshole will say, "Well, it's professional football, motherfucker." You know exactly what we're talking about. That's the same argument people are having. That's why Dr. J, and I made this comment way back before Dr. J. I know he's probably said this a million times, but he came out and said it. I think he's starting to make his rounds and starting to be on podcasts now and be a lot more vocal with a lot of all this because all these kids, because you got the internet and social media shit, everybody's a critic, everybody's this, everybody's an expert, everybody, including myself, everybody has a say. So now guys talking, and Dr. J gets pissed. I told somebody, I said, when you tell Dr. J his 2. All Dr. J has is 1 ring. You tell him that his ABA championship ring don't mean shit. And he talked about that. He said, no, they want to dismiss it like it didn't mean anything. But it did. And you're marketing him, Julius Erving, Dr. J, and you're marketing him. You use his stats and all the high-flying stuff in there. No, they don't use it then. If it didn't count, don't use it. You can't use it. So going back to the NFL, so like Dr. J, and Dr. J said, like that shit don't count. And it does count. Period in the story. That was greedy ass executives and people of jealousy didn't want, and then they end up merging the teams and end up merging the league and all this other stuff. A lot of them made it in, some of them they just disbanded them or whatever. So I say, from a historical point, when you get back to the NFL aspect of it, the most championships, well, that was going to go down to Bart Starr then, if we're going to measure it that way there. But no. But if you're going to this whole thing, well, Otto Graham has 7. We're not even talking about the AFL, talking about whether it's Darryl LaMonica, whether it's guys like Jack Kemp, whether it's John Hadle, and whatnot, all these other guys and whatnot that nobody really wants to talk about. You know what I said? Then then their stuff can't be in there. So you got to count it. So therefore, Tom Brady is tied with Otto Graham. And there's a plethora of other quarterbacks that I would pick before him as a playing the position. But he's the most winningest quarterback, and you got to give him that and what he did. He played so long, and he played at such a high level. There's no shade on this on what Brady did. Brady's fucking 251 and 82. 300. This guy played in fucking, what was it? And he missed the season because of an injury. Yeah. That might have been 2008 or whatever. And this guy played in 335 fucking games, man. 335 games. That's a fucking lot of football. Durable and everything. Brady's tough, everything and stuff like that. But it's like 7. He's tied with Otto Graham, and that's where I'll leave it at. He's tied with Otto Graham. Whether you like that or not, debatable, fine. But you can't just stop there. You're gonna have to do that with AFL as well. You have to do that with the AFL as well. Now, somebody said, well, they all came under some other brother, so we actually took everything. Well, you have to still count, because I wouldn't say anything if you took Otto Graham's, if you took all his stats out and only just said he just played here, started in, let me see, let's do it like this here. So that's 1950. So his stats should start from 1950 and go to 1955. 1950 to 1955, and then we're done. All the other 4 or 5 years or whatever and stuff like that doesn't count. And you rule them from there, since it didn't count. But you're using the stats to further the argument of his greatness, but you don't want to use the A. Come on, man. Stop it. You don't use his record as that. Because it would be a little bit higher. He probably had over 100 and some odd wins. I'm almost guaranteed that he pretty much did at that particular time. They were like 12-2 and 46. 12-1. 12-1-1 and 47. Fourteen and 0 in 1948. 1949, 9-1-2 and whatnot. Won the championship, and then the next year, first year in the NFL championship. I mean, dude, it's insane. It's insane what was done with that team at that particular time. And you're talking about from 46. Look at this, for a 10-year span, one championship, one, two, three, four, 5 championships, then lost 3, and then won 2. So that's 10 championships, 7. Come on, man. So from a historical standpoint of view, you got to give it up. You got to give it up. So Tom Brady's tied with Otto Graham, whether anybody likes it or not. Now you want to sit over and say, well, that's the Super Bowl. Doesn't matter until they wipe his stats out. And in some places they have the AFC up in there. When they wipe his stats out, can't do it. He's tied with Otto Graham. He was tied with Otto Graham. One time he was tied with Bradshaw's and Montana's and Bart Starr. NFL stuff has to count. The NFL stuff does count and everything. You can't just say Super Bowl era and we're going to overlook that stuff. Can't do it. And so it has to count. And I really hope these guys start understanding that way. That's how the game should be played and whatnot. And it's a lot of great quarterbacks that played in this league, and it's just not just 1 or 2 guys or whatever. But you got your top tier and stuff like they got here. But like I said, man, it's a history lesson for y'all. But those are the quarterbacks who have won 3 or more championships, who are all Hall of Fame bound, in the Hall of Fame, all Hall of Fame bound and whatnot. And Patrick Mahomes has a chance to be in that elite company to have 3, because that's dynasties and all this other stuff that they constantly like to talk about in a lot of cases and whatnot. And that's what it was about, because I think dynasty kind of comes when you're doing things in succession and whatnot. So yeah, man. So hey, I'll probably be back a little later. Like I tell you guys, I'll probably be back a little later because I'm gonna talk about the Hall of Fame class. I thought it was a good class, but I do have an issue with a pick in there, a couple of snubs and whatnot. And we'll probably talk about that a little later. But like I tell you guys all the time, there is no GOAT, there's no greatest of all time as long as time's still going on. And numbers don't lie and get emotional. People do. You guys have a good one. We'll talk with you later.